Well, all right. Welcome back to the So There I Was podcast. I'm your host, Travis Womack, and today we have special guest Shawn Livingston. He's a former Cav Scout and former 18 Echo. Is that correct?
Yep.
He's a comm sergeant in the Special Forces. Done a whole lot of things, been all over the world, and I'll let him introduce himself a little bit more. But welcome to the show, Shawn.
Thanks for having me.
So you joined as a Cav Scout Army 1998. And you said you were in Germany until you got out in 2002. Is that my dates accurate there?
So I went in 98. I was in Germany for a few years. So in '02, my unit, the war had just started.
Right.
Um,
Let's go.
and
Let's go there. I'm sorry to jump in there. You're in Germany at 9/11.
yes, yeah.
You got to touch on that a little bit.
That was weird, and everyone's got their 9/11 story where we were,
Right.
what
Right.
happened, um, and the time zone difference. We were like it was one of those days we were just hanging out in the motor pool,
Right.
and I was kind of getting ready. I was a squad leader, and I just wanted to get off of work, So we were walking back from the motor pool, and a bunch of people just start yelling, we need to get in, formation, everyone's yelling and stuff. So we start running down the road to get in formation. And that's when they came out. And, I think at that time, we still didn't know what was going on. It
Right.
was like, you know, basically the first sergeant came out and said, hey, there was an attack. And we knew that the towers fell and that the Pentagon had just been hit, and they thought that there was more coming, and no one knew what was going on. So at the time we were like, nothing was really going on before that except for like Bosnia and Kosovo, right?
Right.
So we were on like our little red cycle, so we didn't know if we were going somewhere, what would be going on. We're an armor battalion. It's not like we could move too quickly.
Yeah.
So,
True.
but um I remember them saying, they were like, if anyone has family in those areas, you know, so we didn't have like our,
Phones
cell
and
phones and stuff
Facebook.
were a
Yeah.
lot different, right? So everyone's lining up at the payphone to make
Oh
phone
yeah.
calls. I had a bunch of I had family in the DC area who actually worked as contractors. So they were like, my sister's office was in the naval annex, which is up on the hill, like
Mm-hmm.
just above like kind of the Pentagon. And so they had to
Oh
like
yeah.
fly actually over her building. And my dad was there too, so he was in and out of actually the Pentagon all the time. So I was like trying
Wow.
to get hold of them just to find out what, we had no idea what was going on,
That's
so
crazy.
I didn't get hold of them until later that night, I think. So, but it was, I think, time wise, I want to say we were getting ready to get off work, so it was probably around 4 o'clock or so, I think, time zone, time difference.
Yeah.
So, but yeah. So then, that all kicked off, and then, I guess, the war started, but then like I was thinking about staying in. I was going to re-enlist, and they were like, my unit was like, oh no, we're going to, Macedonia again. It was like, no, I want to, like, why aren't we doing, so we're just going to
We're
go,
going the wrong direction.
right, we're going to go, I'm going to go sit at a guard tower again. I was like, no, it's, so I figured this war was going to be around for a while. So, um, I decided to go back. I wanted to go back to college, and I had talked to my um, platoon leader about it. He was like, "No, I think he was actually, he was like, I think you'd actually be better as an officer." He was like, "I think you need, you know." So I decided to go back and go to college, and I was going to do the ROTC route, type of like a green to gold type of thing.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So, um, so I decided, I leave and I go back, and I went into a guard unit and started college, and then I meet an SF guy out in West Virginia, and he was like, no, don't do that, man. You have a lot more fun on this side of the fence, He's like, so, here's my buddy's name and number. He gave me a name and number of Sergeant Major. and I called him, and he was like, "Hey, why don't you come out to we have drill this weekend. Why don't you come out?" You know,
Check it
and
out.
yeah, he wanted to do like a little interview, so I met up with him and talked to him, and then he was like, "Hey, you want to go to selection?" And I was like, "Never thought about it before," and I was like, uh, "Okay, I guess I was still in good shape. I just came off of active duty, so so that was so it was in I had to wait 6 months or so. So it was June of '03. So I got done another year of college and then um went to selection, came back and then had to, wait around for a selection date and then got to go down or I mean Q course date and
Right.
started the Q course in summer of '04. So
Okay. So I have to ask you just if you're doing selection, uh, SFAS, for those that don't know what that is, um, in 2003, do you still have fears when you see whiteboards with writing on them?
I guess, I think part of me, I don't know if it was like the military, but you just get into this like, and I was young, you being younger, never thought it just,
Yeah.
you know, I walk out, look at it, and then do whatever it told me to do,
Yeah. You walk through the stores now, you see whiteboards, you're like,
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
this,
yeah.
there's a secret code, figure it out.
They yell for everyone to come outside. You run outside, and they're like, "All right, your next event is a run. We'll tell you when to stop.
Yeah.
Follow those cones." And you're like,
Yeah.
"Okay,
S-
So
I remember that for about 2 years, I'd see random whenever I was in, right after your group, I'd see whiteboards everywhere. I'm like, every unit has these whiteboards. I'm so terrified of what could be on
I've
them.
actually thought about doing that to my kids sometimes because I
Right.
gotta like put it on the stairs as they come down before school because
There you
like
go.
I don't know how many times we've run outside. I'm halfway to their school and they're like,
Why have my shoes?
uh, "Yeah, oh yeah, yeah." I
That's the
don't
worst.
Dad, I didn't put my shoes on. I'm like, what? What? I don't have my backpack, or I left
Yeah.
my lunch, or I forgot my homework. I'm like, what? What?
Yeah.
What were you thinking when you
The
hang
shoes
out
is
the
my
door?
favorite one. I'm like, how
Hey,
I literally put them on your feet. How did this happen? So that's crazy. So you did um you did the Q course and was the Echo course obviously after that and everything else and
Yeah,
all the other little the long
yeah. I was in
pipeline.
the. I ended up. I can say, um, I was actually in like the last long echo class.
Yeah.
I can actually say that because it was like I think it lasted about 6 months because we hit Christmas and stuff like that, and
Right.
it kind of extended. But the class after us, they had taken out a bunch of stuff in the curriculum. Like we still had to look at all the old like cryptography stuff from like
Mm-hmm.
Vietnam, and like, you know,
Morse code.
Morse code and all that
Yeah.
stuff, right? But then the class after us, they took a bunch of that out and it
Yeah.
was only like 2.5 months or something. So then when we went to Robin Sage, there was like two classes of echoes that were all compiled. It was like every team had like four echoes
Right.
on it. So
It's an important job. People don't realize that, you can't talk, can't fight. So
well, yeah, yeah.
it's a it's
It's
a
it's it's heavy though.
it's interesting. Yeah, the batteries are no joke. What's interesting
And
about
they want you to carry all the rechargeables.
oh yeah.
Those big
God.
rechargeables that are like 8 pounds a piece.
No, thank you.
Like here's 10 batteries to put in your backpack. Like
It's funny that you look at that, and I've came from the same our careers overlapped obviously in time. But if you ever watched, you probably should watch American Sniper, but how they film that I think is really awesome because it shows the progression of technology throughout all of his deployments. And I looked at that because I was, man, that's so true. I remember being in Afghanistan in '05 and we were like living like gypsies, and we had no armor, we had no turret shields and stuff. We had the front shield, that's it. And then Iraq and '07 on the surge in a few years, it went from that to these bulletproof skirts around us and top shields and
oh yeah, yeah. And then we had the
camouflage
MRAP,
and
and then
yeah,
suddenly we
then
had
MRAP came out, yeah.
wraps and stuff. Yeah.
But then like,
Uh,
the radio equipment though, like went from being the old ANCD filler, where we used to keep them in our desk, and
yeah.
in our
Oh yeah.
now it's a
The old
little
Kick 13
yeah,
was like was like gold. Like if you could find one of those, because it was just easy. You put it in your pocket, and you just.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember they were. It was hard to get one of those, and they didn't even want to sign them out to us because we were just like, hey, click, click, click.
Yeah.
Everyone really fast. That's.
Yeah. Now it's a Palm Pilot of all things. 'Cause I
Oh
remember,
yeah, yeah. They came out with that.
I forget what it's called now, but I was a recruiter for 4 years. So I went from all these deployments to being a recruiter, and I came back and they're like they put it in the arms room. I'm like, what? It's in the arms room? How do we practice filling radios? This is a EIB task. But Joe's like, it was like they guarded the fields. All of a sudden, like, things have changed. This is crazy. So sorry, I digress. But I have to ask, because if you're an Echo, surely you'll play the Pricky 7 game. It's like a rule. It has to be, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah. Those types of things are like everywhere. I remember in Germany trying to get like our new privates to unscrew the turret or like,
Yeah, exhaust sample's the best.
exhaust sample. I remember we had one that was like this guy. I think it was Tilly. He he was a private. It was just he always had that stare, like he had no clue what was going on. Like one of those. And somebody had him go get an exhaust sample, right?
Oh, yeah.
And he was carrying this exhaust sample, like he took it.
Trash bag full of trash bag.
Well, it just kept going up the chain, and everyone went along with it. It was
right.
like, he took it to our platoon sergeant. The platoon sergeant said, "Hey, you need to take it to the chief up the warrant." Right? He took it to him, and the next thing he's like, you need to take that down to the company commander, and then the company commander sent him all the way up to battalion.
To the XO.
Yeah. And then, yeah. Next thing you know, the battalion commander, and they sent him back down, like going along with the joke, and then they called us, and they were like, the sergeant major calls us and says,
knock that crap out.
Who sent Tilly up here with an exhaust sample?
You're like, man, this has got out of control real quick.
I remember watching thought it was hilarious one day. I saw it was one of those M105s, and I walked by and I was just laughing because they had a couple of these guys out there with Post-it notes, like ting ting ting, and they're trying to find soft spots on the armor. And this M105 was like, it was just covered in Post-it notes. They had to mark it. It was like, oh my God. I was like, wow, that's pretty good. I didn't remember that one.
Write that one down. Those are the best things. Like those little, like they're just silly. We all do it. We've all done Pricky 7. Like at Fort Bragg, there was Area J. It was an unfenced area you could do training in, and until when I left, they put a fence around it. But it was really funny to send somebody get the keys to Area J. But and then like we're an airborne unit, so we didn't have motor pools there for a long time. Until the very end, we're like, oh, I've had a motor pool the whole time, and because we didn't have a clue. But I think those were pretty fun, just like camaraderie. There's when it's just funny. It's like we've all qualified, right? And it's just hilarious to see blood rush our head upside down on a tree. But I think people take it too far. That's where it gets a bad name. It's like, you just grab a tree, hug it.
Oh yeah. I had that in basic training.
Jesus. Yeah, qualifying is hilarious. I have a good buddy of mine who his granddad's a World War II paratrooper. He jumped into Normandy of all things. His dad was in Vietnam, jumped into Vietnam, and then him. And he's supposed to jump into Baghdad, but it didn't happen. And but he has a picture of all three of them upside down, hugging a tree from 1942 to today, and it's like, it's a funny tradition, but we have a bunch of those. I'm sure every branch has their version of that. So sorry, get back to, I digress, back to you. So you're finished with the Q course and stuff, but I do want to hit on so you were in, I guess, is that 19th group out there in the East Coast? Yeah. So excuse me. A lot of people kind of educate people that are listening may not know that we have National Guard Special Forces is probably what you can share, obviously. So
there's 19th and 19th and 20th Special Forces groups in the Guard. They spread out in like 11, I think it's 11 different states. And then like, so our battalion, your battalion might be spread out to different states too. Like
Right.
our battalion headquarters and a company was in West Virginia, and then we still had another company in like Rhode Island and Ohio, So, and then when I transferred to 20th Group in North Carolina, we had like that was one company there. Then there was the other company was in Florida. I think the other one was Alabama. It was like, so it's we're it's kind of spread out, and
Yeah.
then so but each company typically sisters like an active duty group,
Right.
right?
Right.
So for area of operation and stuff like that.
Right.
So you typically would go there more often, but with Afghanistan and Iraq and everybody was
Wanted to
rotating
go in there.
all
Right.
the time. It was just like in West Virginia, we more sistered third group, so they were going to like North Africa. So we would
Right.
have units that would go to go on like small rotations or J sets
Right.
to North Africa, or someone else has Central and
Brazil.
South America or something
Right.
like that.
Yeah.
So just depends on the region of the world that and a lot of times are training missions and stuff like that that go on.
Right.
So
Right. Interesting. Yeah. I think of the amount of time to stay fit and stay proficient and, in
yeah,
all those
all the
categories.
schools that we got to go to. Uh, one thing about the guard is a lot of times there's other schools that you can go to
Hmm.
guard wise where they have them like kind of expedited,
Right.
so you're not in the school for too long, right?
Right. Civilian
Um,
jobs, like, we're cool with it, but this is ridiculous.
yeah,
So,
on the SF side, we have to do the federal school. So when we go to a school, we're still going to, the active component
right.
school typically. And so, yeah, and I don't know, a lot of our guys, I could say, probably not everyone has a regular job. It's
Yeah.
like, it's rare to find, a team with a bunch of guys that have regular jobs. Usually they're on and off order so much,
Yeah.
or they're in some type of law enforcement or something like that. So
So not a lot, not a lot of accountants, you're saying.
yeah. Not, yeah, not many accountants and
We
stuff
need to
like
deploy in April. Not a good time. I gotta stay. I can't deploy. You don't understand.
yeah. And sometimes, and what was hard about like when I owned a business, with the National Guard, they're always like, well, doesn't your employer understand? Because there's like there's that act, I forget what it's called.
Yeah.
Um, but they like have to let you, right? And it's like,
Right.
well, it's not my employer, it's my clients that I
Right.
can't, you know what I mean? Like it's hard to just get up and just go somewhere. I got to prepare this.
Yeah. I can't really replace myself. I'm in charge.
Right.
Okay. Johnny, come here. I know you're only
No matter
five.
how many
Get over
managers
here.
I had, yeah,
Right.
you can't, no matter, you got to find a really good manager, but even when you do, you still can't replace yourself. Like
Yeah.
they don't care about it as much as you do.
Yeah.
So,
That goes for any business. Every leader or owner or anything needs to understand that people other than will never have as much invested or care as you do, because you have time, money, effort,
right.
invested into it, and you have something to lose aside
Yeah.
from just employment. So
And, uh, and that's why I like work. So most of who I work, well, now my business, uh, that's why I like working with veterans more often.
yeah.
They're more, we're all more driven,
Oh yeah.
you know, you have a purpose. So if you started a business, that becomes your purpose,
Oh yeah.
right? It's not, you know, so it's, I don't know, more serious, or if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
Let's hit on that real quick, since we're here. We can come back to the kind of some of your career stuff. But so you're currently working for Wolfhound Franchise Solutions
mm.
and you are a franchisee yourself. Is that correct?
Well, I
You are.
was.
Oh,
So
was okay.
so I had a franchise myself. I sold it, but that's kind of what led me into being a consultant, was
Yeah.
because I'd been in it for, running a franchise for
Yeah.
10 years. Um, trying to kind of figure out what I wanted to do, and I
Right.
wasn't jumping into another one just yet.
Okay.
I found myself becoming a consultant and kind of and helping other people get into, you know, a franchise or a business opportunity, but and also take the steps, like figure out what you're going to do, um, as far as like the due diligence and stuff like that. Yep.
I'll have to edit that out in a minute. What time is it? It's 20. Okay. So on the consulting thing, so working with vets to work with them towards owning their own franchise or business and whatnot. Let's a couple questions on that. Let's kind of hit on that because I talked to a lot of vets in transition, post transition, and kind of struggles they have, I guess.
Mhm.
So with resume building, or I don't know, I would argue that we kind of oversell our military experience or missell it. I led a 55 person platoon. It's like, yeah, you're a platoon sergeant, but like,
A
what does
lot
that
of people on
mean?
the civilian side don't
I have no
understand.
idea what that means. So like, what are some common things that you see people get right or get wrong?
Um, I would resume wise, it is hard. I can say that. It's trying to transfer what you've done and explain it in a way so that a civilian understands it, you know. All the leadership, I think the one thing that's hard for them to understand is in all of that, whether you were in a, you know, depending on the job you're in, but a lot of times like the problem solving and critical thinking,
Yeah.
no matter what job you were in the military, that always takes place, you know, especially if you're deployed or you're out in the field, you know, whatever, or if you're, I don't know, even a squad leader, like it's the uh the amount of responsibility is so much higher.
Oh yeah.
Um, you know,
Most of
I
the
think,
time.
yeah, and especially now, you think the way that wars were fought, you know, they're no longer fought with like, you know, like I don't know, World War I or World War II, where you
Yeah.
had
Get online.
entire regiment moving in in sync with each other across the land, right?
Right.
It's or you know, having the general actually on the ground with them or something. It's
Right.
not like that anymore. You know, as we went on to like by the time we get to Vietnam, it was fought in platoons, you know,
Right.
and then by the time we get to Afghanistan, now we're we're down to, you know, squads and teams.
Yeah.
So the I think
Technology covers that distance.
the responsibility is so much higher. It's not just like the you know the captain that has all the responsibility. There's NCOs that are, you know, might be a staff sergeant who has a whole squad and he's the one actually talking to the guy in town. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So um, there's there's a lot of responsibility that goes on there and leadership and that problem solving part of
Mhm.
it that I think a lot of a lot of people in the civilian world don't quite understand. Or if you do get into, you know, I see a lot of vets, it's hard to figure out where they're going to go to. So
Mhm.
everyone always tries to use their what job they did in the military to
Yeah.
guide that, right? Um,
Artillery is a tough one.
what's that?
Artillery is a tough one. Doesn't really translate.
So yeah, so it's like you try to find that, but then it ends up being like a lot of guys end up like in sales or something
Yeah.
like that, right? Um, and then they'll hustle because we're all in the military, so like we, you know,
Right.
they can hustle, they'll do whatever they have to, you know. It's like, okay, I understand, I can take a no, you know, right? They'll
Right.
like, I have to call 20 people, I'm going to call 20 people, you know,
Right.
whatever it is, they do it. And they'll probably move through that ladder pretty quickly. um or I see guys get, you know, then eventually though, I feel like they can get burnt out because there might be only so far that they can go
Right.
with, right? Unless they further their education to justify moving
Right.
further.
Which
Um,
is a big gap for a lot of enlisted people that aren't using TA and other resources.
right, right. So working for, to me, working for yourself can also be, you know, uh, taking that those skills and that drive and working for finding a way to work for yourself.
Yeah.
is, I guess that's what I did.
Yeah.
It's like I didn't want to be told what to do anymore. So,
It's fair. Um,
right. So, um,
it's
yeah.
interesting because you talk about franchising. Can't talk today. I think people. I remember very well. I applied for a company years and years ago, 2012. No, it was actually 2010 when I applied, and I remember thinking very highly of myself and thinking, oh, if I just put this down, that I was a platoon sergeant, or I was a squad leader, or I was a, you know, whatever, I have all this combat experience, whatever, that they're automatically going to want to talk to me because that sounds cool, and
Right.
I was, you just kind of just transfer some really poorly written NCOR bullets, to your resume. I was responsible for $24 million of equipment, and it's like, dude, you're writing this resume for Amazon. Like it's the richest company, them and Apple. So that doesn't mean anything to them. The stock drops half a point, they make more than that still. So,
Yeah.
so I think kind of understanding the audience, I think is for people. And, I had a episode way back, gosh, a year ago now, interviewed Adam Bratz. And we talked about that very thing about, I met you on LinkedIn, right? And how people have the little paragraph below. My son's music is great. So that little paragraph below a job, what you did, and people put NCR bullets. I'm like, don't put NCR bullets in your LinkedIn profile. Good gosh, no one understands that. Put legit, like, hey, I was directly responsible. And I think that's the thing I'd love to hit on, hear your thoughts, is direct responsibility and indirect responsibility. Because people are like, I led the invasion to Iraq in 2003. It's like, you were a private, you know, you were in the unit. So you were in, say, first ID, that, or you're in 101st, or you're in 82nd, one of those big divisions that literally led the invasion,
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that. So when I was with OCS, um, you learn to pick up on every word that somebody uses and exploit it,
Oh,
because
yeah.
I'm the TAC, I'm the guy with the black hat on, we yell at them, stuff like that, right?
Right.
And I think it's really the guy who's just nervous, and they're always stuttering and stuff, especially in the beginning where we were asking them questions, and he had said that he had uh like we asked him what he did in Iraq, or when or something, and it came out like that he invaded Iraq, and we're like, wait, what? And then somebody was like, his MOS, they were like, weren't you a weather balloon guy? They were like, did your weather balloon go in there first? Like you know just tearing into him like, you took over Iraq with a weather balloon, didn't you? It's like,
It's a high level of humidity you don't understand. So the Euphrates puts off a mean mist. That's
but
yeah.
yeah, I back to your point, I think knowing the audience of who you probably have to adapt every application differently,
Yeah.
so it's say that you're playing on the whatever strength it is that's used in that, whatever that job is,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. I used to, I was a squad leader, you're in charge of like, 7 to 9 people, whatever, depending on our section leader, whatever and what it says and calls it. But I'd say, oh, responsible for a 9-person section, and X amount of equipment. I'm like, we can do better than that. Like, what'd you actually do? I think about what you do, and I'm like, you're directly responsible for the health, welfare, safety, and training, of 9 people. Like that sounds a heck of a lot better than, you know,
yeah.
the other things. Like, and what does that mean? You can expand on that, because that gives an interviewer, okay, what do you mean health and welfare? Like, well, yeah, some people, we get kids that are 18 years old, that the first time they've ever left their house, and they literally don't know how to do laundry. You know, like, I had a counselor guy in Iraq in the surge. I'm like, dude, I don't know how to tell you this, but you must shower daily because you stink. You
Yeah.
know, like, dude's
Yeah.
20, 22, 23 years old. I'm like, why are we having this conversation? You must wash
Or
your clothes. And I don't care if you don't like the smell when they come back. We don't like the smell when they're here, and it's like, you have to do that. You have to go in their room and be like, hey, if we have like 9 vacuums for the barracks. Like, what is on your floor? Just those little things to teach people how to live, aside from just actual training for combat and fitness and all those things, and teach them like, yeah, it is a lot of wearing a seatbelt. I know you don't like it, but it rubs your neck.
in the corporate world is set up a lot like, honestly, it's set up a lot like the a military. And if you think about like the hierarchy of having,
Right.
the leadership and where it's broken
Mm-hmm.
down at, you know, um, or so when I talk to some guys about certain franchises,
Yeah.
uh, as I'm describing it, typically, especially in home services type of stuff or
Right.
junk removal or something like that, right? It's, I think about, uh, you have your squad. That's you have your guys that are going out in your vehicles.
Right.
Let's say you have you know, I don't know, 4 different vehicles and you have a couple technicians, right? You meet up with them that morning. It's like you're sending your guys from your platoon in different directions, so
Right. Oh yeah.
that's how I, describe it, is thinking of being a platoon leader or something, or a platoon sergeant, and or your squad leader, and you're telling your guys, where to go. What's your job today? This is where you're going. This is what you got to do. Right.
Yeah.
A
Well,
lot.
it is, that hierarchy is very, very true. I think that second level of responsibilities is kind of foreign though, where if you're, you know, say you work for me or I work for you, didn't matter, pick the scenario, like your home life, I care about, most civilian people care about because we're humans, but like there's a whole different level of like, soldiers, we'll go to each other's houses, you know, and do welfare checks on each other. And the barracks are a whole different story, obviously, but um, then the correlating the responsibility as a leader of like, no, I've been to Joe's house, him and his wife are having a fight, and I went and picked Joe up, and he came and crashed at my place, until they calmed
Well,
down.
it's that's why they have the housing areas, but there's also
Right.
I know guys like down at Bragg,
Oh yeah.
there's or Liberty, right?
Liberty.
There's
We're all having
I
to say
Liberty.
it's so many new names. You got to figure it all out.
But the I know guys who live further out, like
Mm-hmm.
in certain town, like whether they're in Aberdeen or
Oh yeah.
Pinehurst area, or
Oh
even
yeah.
up
Raleigh.
uh yeah, Raleigh, like Apex. And I knew a
Yeah.
guy that lived up here in Wake Forest, but he would just sleep in his team, was commuting down,
Right.
but they knew that I don't know, their family was safe. And a lot of times, like a bunch of other guys from their unit are actually buying up houses in that same subdivision.
Yeah.
So now you might have like 5 or 6 guys all in the same,
Yeah.
all in the same area. So if somebody's deployed or something like that, you still
Take care of
have,
each other.
right. You know what I mean? Or, you don't have to worry about like your house getting robbed or something like that, because there's 5 other guys in the block who
Right.
will know,
That's very true. So I
so
think that's great. I encourage anybody that's listening, if they're, interested in this, definitely reach out to Shawn and get, some input. And, franchising is a great opportunity. I've, there's some well-known big money franchises out there. Obviously, you have to refine, have millions of dollars of liquid assets and stuff. And, I'm sure that's not where most of us are at, for the more confident. So I'm sure you have a long list of, more reasonable places to start and still get some satisfaction and joy in life and good quality income. So, yeah, I'm sure. Am I right? Am I way off
oh yeah,
base?
yeah, yeah. If you're
So,
there's there is a point where if you have a certain amount of money, it makes things a lot easier,
oh yeah,
right? And you don't need to have $1 million or something. um but there are a few out there that you can get into at a much lower cost. If
yeah,
I don't know, 30, 40, 50 grand, something like that,
oh
that's
yeah,
much easier to to get into, or it might be easier to get a loan.
Right.
It might be easier to to manage. Now, a lot of those you're going to work yourself.
Right.
Right. So that's the
Gotta
thing is,
work. Gotta work.
yeah. Yeah. Don't think you're, all of a sudden you have all these people working for you. People cost money, right?
Yeah.
So, if you're starting out at a lower entry point, you're probably going to work just for yourself for
Yeah.
a little while,
Yeah.
until you start to build it. But yeah, it's possible. There's a few out there
Yeah.
if you want to put the work into it, um, that might be a little bit easier, and you can still, if you just wanted to do it yourself, you could still make a pretty decent living.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
so,
So everybody defaults to the fast food industry, and a couple of those are big money. So
yeah, oh yeah, but and people don't realize sometimes the ones that cost a lot too don't necessarily always make a lot of profit, right?
yeah,
So
just
the
breaking
people
even.
buy it as an investment. They're buying the property or something,
Yeah.
but ultimately they have, if they're that big, there's also a lot of expenses going out,
Oh yeah.
right? You know,
Oh yeah.
um, so a fast food joint, if they got, I don't know, you get $2 million in revenue coming in,
Yeah.
but you also have like
One
50
point
part-time employees and
1.6 million going out for expenses. So, yeah,
right.
it's about right. So
Yeah.
it's pretty accurate in that realm. So, but I would encourage anybody that's out there that's in that. I've looked into it myself for a couple of things um, before I open my own business. So definitely worth a phone call to Shawn and his team about options there. So let's go back to real quick here before we end this up. So you mentioned you're doing a little bit of OCS to be in the attacking. So I'm sure that was a whole lot of fun. I've never gotten to be an instructor. I think it's the one thing in my career I'm kind of like, oh, that would have been a whole lot of fun. So
It was fun. I like to teach.
yeah,
I don't know, I just like to, I mean, yeah, it's there's funny times when you are, yelling at somebody, or people don't get is like you have to, especially when OCS, you're trying to test their leadership ability under pressure and stress.
hmm
And that's the only way you can do it. You can't shoot at them, right?
right,
You have to put pressure on them in some way so that, to see how they react to it. But we're not always yelling at them. It's not, but
yeah,
I always like that can be funny. Sometimes I got to turn around and walk away because I have to laugh or something, you know. And there are some guys out there that are really good at it. Like it's like comedians. Like
it's a
they should be,
persona. So
yeah. So, but I like to teach, So when I was doing the like the infantry, like just the infantry classes of like ambushing and raids and stuff like that. Like I would get into it. I'd take them all outside and like, we're not just doing a PowerPoint,
right,
let's actually practice this. Let's do, step by step, you know, make sure everyone understands it. These are the pieces on, moving around, that sort of stuff. I used to get into that stuff.
oh yeah,
Um, and then trying to relate it operationally, because I know that, at that point, those guys might end up somewhere overseas and
making
using
decisions.
that, or
Yeah,
in some way understanding something. So it's, if it helps save somebody's life, you know that's great. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So
that's
I always
awesome.
enjoyed teaching. So
It's one thing I always look back. I'm like, man, that'd been a lot of fun to. I love to teach as well, and it's I've been E3 to E6. E6 promotable, and then I went to OCS as a lieutenant, all in a major. And I get asked a lot of times, what's my favorite rank? And I think about it for a while, but I think E6 was probably my favorite one, honestly. Because it's the last time I got to teach, and I had some really good guys to work with. And it's a lot of fun to take somebody who's raw out of basic training, out of airborne school, and like it's truly your responsibility to kind of vomit that information that hopefully, if it comes to it, can save their life. So
yeah,
it's pretty cool.
I actually know a guy who was he was a major. He was actually our company commander at one point.
Yeah.
Um, but when he was like moving up to the battalion level and
hmm
was like, especially in the SF side, it pyramids off really quickly.
Oh yeah,
Like
it's real steep.
you'll never do anything cool again. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
like so he actually what do they call that? He declined his commission. He so
Resign his commission.
yeah, he
Yeah.
got it. So he stopped being a major and he went back to an E6 and went
Yep.
back to the team just because he was like, I'd rather
Yeah.
rather
It's
do that to get the retirement of a major when I get out of here. But
it's crazy. It happened. It's a funny story, not to digress from that, but when I was a recruiter, we had a dude who was a Marine captain. Like he was like one of the Marines that like retook Fallujah, and he got out and came to my recruiting office, wanted to be a Green Beret. And we're like, did you get
we had a bunch of Marines always.
Yeah, you gotta like resign your commission. We can't do that. He's like, okay, cool. So he came back 3 weeks later with a letter of resignation approved by a senator. And we're like, okay. So we're like, you have to figure out what rank you are. And he came back in E5. And it's like, he's like, cool. And like, you do realize your last name is Sergeant. So you are now officially Sergeant.
Nice.
Like, he's like, you're gonna be Sergeant for a
I know.
long
I always
time.
thought it was funny when I met people like that. It was like, yeah.
Like,
I knew a guy with a last name Major. So when it was your Sergeant
Major,
it's like it. I knew somebody who was their last name was Wood. So
you gotta have go with that one. Yeah, that's
they were an officer. So eventually that's going to come up.
Oh
too.
yeah, I had a Woody in my basic training class. I'm like, ooh, should definitely don't commission. He actually became a pilot. I'm like, so now you're Chief Woody. Okay, good job. So, that's great. Well, Shawn, this has been a lot of fun. I'm sure we could sit here at BS and have a and tell stories that we could probably get further away from the G and PG rated of shenanigans in the world. But I really appreciate your time and being on here. And I find, I find people that were in the service during 9/11. I think it's fascinating. Because I've got people that were at West Point, they were in basic training, they were in airborne school, we're all over. Everybody remembers where we were if we're of age around that time. But it's a unique thing to hear those stories of what different units were doing, how they treated it, and then compare it to like how we operate now.
Oh yeah,
like what we've learned is fascinating.
Oh, it was two different militaries.
Yeah,
like the pre 9/11 and post 9/11, it just entirely changed. And so on the National Guard side of it, if they were in the National Guard, that was really that was like, pre 9/11, it was the weekend. It was like, it was the poor man's country club, and you were, guys would just go drink beer and they get a jump in on the weekend. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then after 9/11, it was like,
trained.
Like, yeah, hey, you guys can't be overweight anymore, and we're deploying just like everyone else on a regular basis. So
it's one of the worst things ever happened. But as far as the military side and us, like body armor alone, I mean, forget anything else.
The old flak vest, it did not.
No flak vest. I'm like, you just look at just body armor and old SAPI plates to the Kevlar stuff we have now and everything else.
Or I could kick a door. I could literally put my foot through like the Humvee door. It was that was supposed to protect us.
It was kind of a definite upgrade that was needed. I hate to ever use that as the excuse, but it was it's interesting to see because coming in 03 to retire, for me, this past year and just seeing everything has changed, it's been pretty interesting. So I love, thanks for sharing your story and your time on that. And we'll have to have you back. If we can find Tilly, we got to find Tilly and see if he still has that exhaust gas.
Yeah. We'll see if he's still carrying his exhaust sample.
So, well, cool. I'll I gotta get. I'll send you away and hope to be in touch soon.